Prime Minister Netanyahu is cutting short his visit. He is meeting President Vladimir Putin right now. The men are talking about Syria and Iranian entrenchment in the country. But after the meeting, instead of spending the night there, he is rushing back tonight to Jerusalem a full day earlier than planned because it is expected that Israel's Attorney General could announce his decision on bribery indictments tomorrow. Multiple Hebrew language reports say the Attorney General will make up his mind and announce the decision on those 3 corruption cases again tomorrow. It is a major deal. With us now in Moscow is Julia Chapman. I want to ask about this meeting. It just got started. They're meeting right now. The relationship between Netanyahu and Putin is strong. They've met many times, but it's certainly become much more strained in recent months. What's the atmosphere today?
That's right. There certainly have been tensions between the two leaders over the last few months. And as you say, they've just gotten underway with their bilateral talks. They were addressing the press briefly about 20 minutes ago, and now they've gone behind closed doors to take their talks further. And of course, highest on the agenda will be Syria. They will mostly be talking about the situation in Syria, particularly 2 weeks after President Putin hosted a trilateral meeting on Syria with his Iranian and Turkish counterparts here in Russia, in Sochi. And although nothing concrete came out of that meeting, no announcements, no pledges were made as a result of that summit. That was certainly something that he will be discussing with Prime Minister Netanyahu today. And of course, Prime Minister Netanyahu very keen to be speaking about Iranian influence in the country. He's going to be seeking assurances from Moscow, from President Putin, to be limiting Iranian influence in Syria, particularly in regions closer to Israel. And that's something that he's going to be seeking from President Putin. But of course, he's also going to be needing to give some explanation to President Putin about airstrikes that Israel has been carrying out in Syria. Moscow has been increasingly losing patience with Israel as some of these attacks are getting a little bit too close to home, too close for comfort for Russia, particularly amid the backdrop of the attack in September, where 15 Russian servicemen were killed when a Russian military plane was shot down by a Syrian jet that was trying to defend from an Israeli attack. So after that incident, there was an enormous amount of tension between the two leaders.
Russia made it clear that they blame Israel for the development of that airstrike, even though it was a Syrian battery that shot down the Russian jet. They blame Israel for leading the airstrike in the first place. I want to ask about that. You mentioned the alarm about Israeli airstrikes in Syria coming too close to comfort. Since the last time Netanyahu and Putin met, Julia, the S-300, this newer, state-of-the-art air defense system, is now in place near Damascus. It could be a game changer. It impacts the way perhaps Israel will do airstrikes against Iranian targets. The S-300s, the Iranian, is that going to come up in the meeting today about how to avoid the downing of Israeli jets during sorties?
Yes, that's certainly something that we can expect Prime Minister Netanyahu to be raising with Vladimir Putin, his Russian counterpart. They'll be talking again about the system in place between Russia and Israel to warn each other about strikes that are happening to avoid harming each other's military in Syria as the conflict is ongoing, as both countries have their own interests and their own activities in Syria. So that's something that they're going to be discussing. And of course, this is actually the first meeting between President Putin and Prime Minister Netanyahu since that attack in September. So they will certainly be thrashing out some of those issues today, talking about how to avoid any further calamities in the future. But as you say, relations between the two countries have broadly been very positive, so the two will be looking to see how they can improve the tensions that have been arising over the last few months.
All right, Julia Chapman live for us in Moscow.